Hello, welcome back. Today let us see in detail about buses. As you know, the processor, the main memory and various I/O devices are interconnected by means of a common bus. And the main purpose of this bus is to provide a communication path for the transfer of data. Also, we have seen that bus typically contains three sets of wires, right? One to carry the address information, another to carry data, and the third one to carry control information. And the control information is not just a read or write command. Instead, a lot of other information like a set of signals to support interrupt mechanism, bus arbitration, etc. also there. Now, how the access to the same bus by multiple devices are actually get managed without any conflict. So definitely a set of rules should be there, and these rules are called bus protocols. So we can say that bus protocols is a set of rules that governs the behavior of various devices, like it decide when to place a data on the bus or when to assert a control signal or how long a corresponding control signal should be asserted, like that. So we can see these bus protocols in detail, and also to support the implementation of this bus protocol there should be some mechanism to provide timing information. That is, some of the control signals in the bus should carry some timing information, and these signals specifies the time at which the processor and other I/O devices may place the data on the bus, receive the data from the bus, etc. So based on how the timing is actually managed, two different bus transfer schemes are there: synchronous bus and asynchronous bus. So we can see these two schemes in detail. Now, before getting to the different transfer schemes, we can see some terminologies used in this bus transfers. First one is bus master. So another name is initiator, and the device that initiates the transfer is usually called as the bus master, and another term is slave. So the device at the other end, that is the device addressed by this bus master, is usually termed as slave. And coming to the synchronous bus organization, so all the devices connected to the bus will be driven by a common clock line. That is, one line in the control bus is dedicated to generate clock pulses and is wired to all the devices connected to the bus and generate equally spaced pulses at regular intervals. Each of this interval constitutes a bus cycle. You can see in the figure that each of this interval constitutes a bus cycle. And for the timing we are talking about single cycle bus transfers. That means each data transfer should take exactly one bus cycle. Now, with the help of a figure, we can see how an operation takes place in the case of a synchronous bus. So, this figure shows a sequence of events during an input operation, that is a read operation. So, the duration of the bus cycle is T0 to T2. You have to complete the operation within this time period. So, at time T0, the bus master places the address of the slave on the address bus and also the read command on the control lines. And if we go through the address bus, we can see that is shown as both high and low at the same time, right? Why so? Because the address bus, as you know, is a set of lines, and the number of lines in this address bus definitely depends on the system architecture. Just for example, suppose we have a 64-bit address bus, 64 different address lines will be there. Each carry one bit of the current slave's address. So definitely some of the lines will carry zeros, whereas others in the set will carry 1. So it's a general convention to represent the address bus as both high and low simultaneously. And the same thing is applicable to database also. So at time T0, the bus master places the address of the device on the address bus and issues a read command on the control lines. Now at time T1, the slave is expected to respond with the corresponding required data. That means the period T1 minus T0. This period should be longer than the sum of two different time elements. Those are the maximum propagation delay through the bus. That, in other words, time to reach the corresponding address and read command to the corresponding slave. And second, the time to decode the address and command by the slave. Then only it can respond properly at time T1. Hence at T1, the slave places the requested data on the data bus. Okay. Now at T2, This is a time T2, that is after finishing the first clock cycle, the bus master stops the data on the data lines into its input buffer. Stop in the sense it captures the values of the data at that instant and store them into its input buffer. Actually, storing the data is not an instantaneous process because, as you know, or as you learned in the earlier classes, these registers are actually built up with flip flops, right? Hence, to load the data correctly into these registers, the data should be available for a period which is called the setup time for the corresponding registers. So, the period T2 minus T1 should be greater than the sum of two different time elements, that is, the maximum propagation time on the bus and the setup time of the input buffer register of the master. These two time elements should be accumulated within this period T1 to T2. The diagram shown here is actually an idealized one. That is, actually the signals seen by different devices will be different as they are connected at physically different points on the circuit, right? So the propagation delays for the same signal to reach different devices will be different. That is, the signal transition seen by a master will be different from that of a slave. So we can see a detailed view of these two diagrams. That is, signal transition seen by a master and signal transition seen by a slave. So we can see here that the address placed by the bus master at point TAM, time TAM, is seen by the slave only at TAS, that is after time gap. Like that, the data placed by the slave at TDS is seen by the bus master only at time TDM, again after a time gap. So the scheme we have discussed so far can be called as a single cycle transfer because each and every transfer should be completed within one clock cycle, say T0 to T2. So definitely this will result in a simpler design for device interfaces. But there are certain limitations also. That is, to complete all the transfer within one clock cycle, the clock period should be chosen to accumulate the longest delays on the bus and the slowest device interface. So in effect, we are forcing all the devices to operate at the speed of the slowest devices. That is a major limitation. Another thing is that the processor has no way of determining whether the address device has actually responded or not. It just assumes that at T2, that is after finishing the first clock cycle, that the data will be there in the data lines. So if due to some malfunction, if the device does not respond, there is no way of detecting the error. So how can we overcome these limitations? So here comes a solution, that is multi-cycle transfer. So in multiple cycle transfer, some control signals can be incorporated to represent the device response. And this signal will inform the master that the slave has recognized his address and is ready to participate in a data transfer operation. The signal also make it possible to adjust the duration of this data transfer to make it suitable for the participating device. That is, definitely different device may have different time requirement to finish off the data transfer. This signal can also be used to fix upon this time requirement. To simplify this process, a high frequency clock signal is used, and the duration of this clock pulses will be definitely very short, and that complete data transfer for a particular operation would span over several clock cycles. That is, depending on the device, the number of clock cycles involved can vary from 1 to several clock cycles. So we can see with an example. So now let us see the sequence of events for an input operation in the case of a multiple cycle transfer. So we are using a high frequency clock here to drive all the devices. And as we have seen earlier, at the clock cycle 1, the bus master places the address on the address bus and the read command on the control line. So after a certain delay, that will be reached to the corresponding slave and it will start recording it. On the beginning of the next clock cycle, it begins to access the corresponding data, requested data. Obviously, there will be a delay, so it cannot respond at the clock cycle 2. So what it will do is, at clock cycle 3, the data will be placed on the data lines. At the same time, the slave will assert a signal called slave ready. This signal is used to inform the master that the data is ready at the data lines. So the bus master who was waiting for this will stop the data into its input buffer at the end of clock cycle 3. So by clock cycle 3, the entire data transfer will be finished so that the bus master can proceed with the new transfer at clock cycle 4. This is how it will proceed. So the slave ready signal here is an acknowledgement from the slave to the master informing that valid data has been sent. So if the address device does not respond at all, the master waits for some predefined number of clock cycles and then the operation will be aborted. Now, the processor clock and the clock signal used on a bus are not necessarily the same because, as you know, the processor clock controls the internal operation of the processor chip, right? So the delays here will be much less than the delays on a bus that interconnect different chips. So we say that clock frequencies are highly technology dependent. In a typical processor, the frequencies above 500 MHz are common, whereas for the clock which drives the IO bus and memory bus, the clock frequency may be in the range of just 50 to 150 MHz. This is the clock frequency range. Now, many of the computer buses, such as the one in Pentium and ARM processors, use this kind of synchronous bus. Now we can see another type of approach that does not use a clock signal at all. That is called asynchronous bus. Here the common clock signal is replaced by a handshake between the master and slave. That is, the common clock signal is replaced by two timing control lines, master ready and slave ready. So master ready is asserted by the master to indicate that it is ready for a transaction, and the slave ready is the response from the corresponding slave. We can see how it works. So here is the sequence of events for an input operation in case of an asynchronous bus. So initially the bus master places the address on the address lines and the corresponding read command on the control lines. After that, it will assert a master ready signal to indicate all the devices that it is done so. Okay. On seeing this, all the devices connected to the bus will decode the address, and the device which was actually addressed, that is a slave here, perform the required operation. Here is an input operation, so place the corresponding data on the data bus is the required operation, and at the same time it will inform the processor that it has done so by activating a slave ready signal. Okay. So the master waits for the slave ready signal to become active to remove its signal on the bus, that is master ready signal and the address based on the address. Only when the slave is ready with the data, the master will remove the placed signals from the buses. In case of a read, it also stops the data into its input buffer. Now coming to the details of this diagram, at time t0, the bus master places the address on the address bus and read command on the control lines. And all the devices on seeing this information start decoding this information. Now at time t1, the master places the master ready signal to inform all the devices that the address and the command information is already placed on the corresponding lines. So why there is a time gap between this placing of this address and command, then the master ready. So we are providing any. Can it place both this information simultaneously? Here is this time gap is actually introduced for allowing any type of skew. So what's actually a skew? Skew happens when two different signals transmitted simultaneously from the same source but arrives at the destination at different times. This usually happens because different lines on the bus may have different propagation speeds. So there should not be any situation that the master ready signal arrives at a device ahead of the corresponding address and command information. So obviously this delay, that is t1 minus t0, should be greater than any possible skew in the lines. At time t2, the selected slave having decoded the address and command information perform the required operation, that is places the data on the data bus from its data register, and at the same time it places a slave ready signal on the control line to indicate the processor that it has done. And if the device interface circuitry incurs any type of delay in placing the data on the data lines, it should delay the corresponding slave ready signal accordingly. And the slave ready signal is received by the master at time t3. Now you can see that the slave is not bothered about any type of skew, that is, it places both the data and the slave ready signal at the same time on the bus. So the processor should be able to cope up with a skew, any possible type of skew. So after a delay equivalent to the maximum skew and the minimum setup time for the corresponding input buffer, the master stops the data into its input buffer. At the same time, it drops the corresponding master ready signal to indicate that it has received the data. And we can see that it drops or removes the address from this address bus only at time t4. Again, there is a time delay from t3 to t4. After completing the data reading from the data bus, it removes the address and command from the address corresponding buses only after a time gap t3 to t4. Why this time gap? So this is again for a skew. Suppose the device finds the change in address before it receives a drop in the master ready signal. There is a chance of erroneous addressing. That is why it first removes the master ready signal. Only after that, after possible maximum Q, it removes the corresponding address and control signal from the buses. Now at time t5, the device finds that master ready signal is dropped. So the data transfer is over. The device removes the corresponding slave ready signal and the data from the corresponding bus. So this will complete the input transfer. So we have gone through two different bus transfer schemes. So when we design a new system, which option would be better? That is the question. So of course, the choice of a particular design involves trade-off among different factors. So we can see what are the different factors to be considered. So first factor is simplicity of the device interface. If we analyze these two schemes based on the simplicity of device interface, of course the asynchronous bus will be the winner, because the handshake process used there eliminate the need for synchronization of sender and receiver. Thus the timing design will be simplified. Whereas in case of synchronous bus, a clock circuitry must be there for synchronization. So the design would be a bit complex. Now the second factor is the ability to accommodate device interfaces that introduce different amounts of delay. So how these two different schemes support varying delays in different device interfaces, or how they cope up with dynamic loads. So here also asynchronous bus will be the winner, because in the case of asynchronous bus, the time period for a transfer is flexible here and can be adjusted when a device interface demand for. Whereas in case of a synchronous bus, the clock circuitry is already fixed, so all the delays must be kept within the strict bounds. Now coming to the third factor, that is total time required for a bus transfer. So if we think about the transfer time for these two different schemes, obviously synchronous bus will be the winner, right? Because if we just go through the diagram we have shown in the last sequence of events, that is for an asynchronous bus, 4 different end-to-end delays are involved for each transfer. That is, first a master's ready from masters to slave to initiate the transfer. Then after putting the data, the slave will send a slave ready from slave to master. Again, after stopping the data, master have to drop the corresponding master ready that should be reached into slave. Again, a dropping from slave ready signal that should be reached from slave to master. So 4 end-to-end delays are incurred, which make the transfer process slow. Whereas in synchronous, only one end-to-end delay is incurred, which makes this corresponding transfer a bit faster. So definitely synchronous bus will be the winner in case of time required for the transfer. Now the fourth factor is the ability to detect errors resulting from addressing non-existent devices or from an interface malfunction. So if we check whether these two schemes have the provision to find out the slave address slave is live or error, or whether it is ready or not. So definitely the asynchronous bus will be the winner here, because in that case asynchronous transfer will proceed only when it receives a response from the slave. Otherwise, it will wait for a few bus cycles and will abort the operation. But in case of synchronous transfer, the bus master will just initiate the transfer in the first half of the clock cycle and will just assume that the second half of the clock cycle the data will be ready or the operation will be performed by the slave. There is no provision to check whether the slave is there or not. So asynchronous bus will be the winner here. Based on this analysis, which one will be the overall winner? We cannot say like that. Anyway, most of the systems uses a synchronous bus scheme, because time of transfer is one of the most important factor to be considered, in which the synchronous bus is much better than the asynchronous bus schemes. So most of the system adopt these schemes. Anyway, the main drawback was that how to accommodate slower devices. And this can be easily solved using multiple cycle operation, that is extending the number of cycles depending on the device requirement. So most of the system uses synchronous bus with multiple cycle operation. Thank you.